Dobry dzień, dobryści. You know, I was never raised in a religious home. My parents believed in the Bible, but we never really practiced Christianity. I mean, we practiced Christianity in the sense that most people in Western countries do. We celebrated Christmas and Easter and all that kind of thing. But the only time we ever went to church was for weddings and funerals and whenever we would visit my grandparents who would regularly go to church. And when I was a kid and I would ask things like, where does everything come from? They would answer me in Bible stories because those are the only answers they knew. But I was never told that I ever had to believe any of it. And when I was told these Bible stories, I would find them very interesting. I would find them interesting simply because they were so bizarre. I like to hear weird shit about the world, and I was never told any different, so I believed it. A guy parted the Red Sea using magic? That's fucking awesome. A guy fit 2 of every kind of animal onto a boat? That's fascinating. At the time, I was also very interested in Bigfoot and alien abduction and all that kind of thing for the same reason. As a matter of fact, Aaron Ra made a video in which he talks about how he used to believe in that kind of thing too. He and I were both heavily influenced by a show called In Search Of. This was a show that was all about all kinds of different paranormal things like ghosts and aliens and all that kind of stuff. And it would be narrated by Leonard Nimoy. And for some reason, everything Leonard Nimoy said sounded very logical. But nobody in my family ever really forced religion on me. I was never told you can't do X because the Bible says so. This makes me a lot luckier than a lot of the atheists on YouTube. But while I would found these weird things that were in the Bible very interesting and I wanted them to be true because they were so weird, I was always still open to counter arguments. I was always still open to evidence against them. And I only started to become really skeptical of the Bible when I would meet Christians who did not share that same intellectual openness. When I met Christians like this, I would say things like, "Oh, you're a Christian, that's fascinating. I love the Bible. There's some amazing stuff in there." But then I would ask them things like, "But how do you explain some of the really far-fetched stuff in there? Like, how do you reconcile the fact that the Bible says that the sun revolves around the earth when we've known that it's the other way around for hundreds of years?" And when I asked these questions, I fully expected intelligent answers. Or at the very least, I expected them to say, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. But instead, the reaction was for them to give me the stink eye and then tell me how offensive I was being just for asking a question. And the more Christians that I met who were like this, the more apparent it became to me that they didn't really even care whether what they believed in was true. That was not their main motivation for believing. That's not what really convinced them. And it was these Christians who most often were the snobbiest people I knew, the ones who would turn their nose up at anybody who was not Christian. Now, not all Christians or religious people in general are like this, but it seems like there are some religious people who are primarily religious because they are by nature bullies, or they've been raised to be bullies. And they are religious mainly because religion gives them a bludgeon they can use against people they don't like. It also allows them to delude themselves into believing that their irrational hatreds and prejudices are somehow grounded in reality. Because if you don't like somebody and you don't have any really good reason to dislike them, you can always find an excuse in religion. And it is this that I cannot stand. This and the idea that faith is a virtue. I also can't stand the idea that the less evidence you have for a belief, the less sense that belief makes, the more virtuous you are for believing it. If religious people could give me convincing arguments for their religions, I'd be religious. If they didn't use their religion as a bludgeon to persecute and scold those they don't like, then I would have no reason to deal with them at all. It is the use of religion as a tool to oppress, more than religion itself, that motivates me to speak out against it.